Well, first I want to say to Tim Szilard, when he called me at my office and said, you have to come and speak at the 75th anniversary of the Rosenberg Foundation, I went to law school with Tim. We sometimes went to class together. And so he had so much he could actually put out in the public domain, there was no way I could ever say no to him. And so I'm here against my will. I haven't been rendered to San Francisco, but I want to first thank Tim and the board for inviting me here. I think we all feel the palpable sense of a revival. There is a camaraderie in this room. There's an acknowledgement of the important work that we've done and a recognition of the work we must do going forward. And I think for many of us who are often in too many airplanes and too often running from pillar to post, to actually have a moment to relish the successes is what is going to give us the energy to pursue our agenda as we go forward. And so it is a real tribute, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to feel rejuvenated and to feel part of a much bigger movement that is just remarkable to look across this room. There are so many great people in this room. Even Patterson hired me when I was a law student. Stuart Quo is there. I'm going to get myself in trouble now. Barbara Arnwine. There's many, many very dear friends. Bill Lanley, our Attorney General for Civil Rights. And I just want to say that to General Harris, I am just thrilled to see you as the Attorney General. And I want to know whether or not they give you the nice little lapels, like, or the little stripes of a general. The ACLU and the Rosenberg Foundation, we have been partners for many years working together on injustice and for the basic rights and dignity of all Californians. Your foundation remains a very strong supporter of our affiliates, headed up here in Northern California by Abdi Sultani in the audience. And we want to really thank you for helping us both reach beyond our mission and to think more expansively about civil liberties, especially in parts of the state where they are still only an aspiration and not a reality. And the ACLU just this last year celebrated its 90th anniversary. And that celebration that we held in Ellis Island back in September made me think that as exhilarating and as easy as it is to get caught up in the past victories of an organization as storied as the Rosenberg Foundation or the ACLU, this really is no time to look back. We cannot afford ourselves a valedictory. This must be, in fact, a commencement. Your foundation is as vital and as necessary today as it's ever been. Even in a state like California, there are people who are systematically stripped of their rights. We know that all too well in this room. And if it had not been that Max Rosenberg and the men and women who founded this foundation, we would not have made the progress that allowed so many of us to grace these halls today. I think if Max Rosenberg were alive, he'd tell us that they're counting on us to keep up that tradition and that vision. They might also express severe disappointment with the vicissitudes of the political process and the ebbs and flows of these inevitable social justice battles. And if we look toward the next 25 years, we must channel that ambition and demand that we achieve that which seems so difficult to achieve. We must even re-win battles by those who fought before us. And we need not look very far, but we can see that there's a very dark streak in American society today. When you and I look back on the Rosenberg's first 75 years, we found inspiration for change and progress. But there are others today whose political star is rising, who romanticize the bleakest moments of American history and are fighting hard to drag us back. They couch their intolerance, their bigotry, and their hatred behind an affable veneer. Sometimes they even cry on television. They speak in code to those who understand, And they use the law not to open up our society, but to institutionalize intolerance, injustice, and bigotry. Now, this is not new for the Rosenberg Foundation. When you were established 75 years ago, Jim Crow was the law of the land. West Coast Hispanics were subjected to the same sort of prejudice and segregation as Southern blacks. Anti-immigrant hysteria was common. We're not long past the time when we would keep Asians from our shores as a matter of law, where Jews, Catholics, and other religious minorities were second-class citizens, where LGBT people and people with disabilities had no legal protections at all. And it was the work of Rosenberg and many of you in this room who now represent those important organizations who made the difference. But now we confront politicians who are attempting to bring us back, dressing the same old prejudices in new clothes and riding intolerance to political power. So we have to be quite conscious. What can we achieve in the next 25 years? This is the question that Tim posed to us and that the panel will now address afterwards. What can we hope to accomplish? And what battles must we fight, even if success is not even clear or assured? In the context of what is absolutely winnable, it's always very dangerous to predict the future. I am a lapsed lawyer, not a tarot card reader, but I predict to you, my dear friend Tim, that I will be at your wedding within the next 5-10 years. Progress on the LGBT agenda is just a matter of time, a very short period of time. The vitriol and the hatred that is spewed by the right-wing religious conservatives is so virulent because they know that they've lost the game. They cannot help but see that America has changed and that it is inevitable that lesbian and gay couples will marry everywhere in this country. And we will see that in a really short period of time with the ending of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Just the beginning of the bell. You look at the differences of political viewpoints of young Americans, and there is hope. Barbara Bush, how much we love her. And I think the fact that if we do our job right, and if we do it a little bit more smartly, we can bring along even the parents of people like Barbara Bush. Let me suggest one thing on the marriage issue. Tim asked me to be provocative a bit. I think one of the places where we did not really hit the point on the marriage equality debate was that we took for granted that these were principles. They were self-evident truths, that we were all supposed to be created equal and so we should be able to marry equally. Those are very good principles. They don't resonate with the concrete nature of what discrimination actually means for when gay and lesbian couples can't marry. And to just make the arguments that fairness is fair doesn't get you all the way there, frankly. We have a new series of cases in our LGBT docket, which is focused very specifically to show the material harm that gay and lesbian couples have because they suffer discrimination. Take the case of Edie Windsor, my favorite client, 82 years old, married to her partner of 47 years, Thea. They were married in Canada. New York recognizes their marriage since it was lawfully executed in an out-of-state jurisdiction. So they're married for all intents and purposes. Thea dies after 2 years of a very difficult battle with multiple sclerosis. Thea, who was the first woman executive who climbed through the management ranks of IBM, has to nurse her partner of 47 years through an illness, and then on her death has to pay $400,000 in estate taxes that no heterosexual couple would have to pay. to show concretely how this beautiful, white-haired, 82-year-old elderly woman has to pay for her relationship really underscores the point that it's not just about the nomenclature or the language. It's about the hard reality of being an equal citizen. We have another case. I know I see the flashing red light, whoever's George Orwell back there. Another case of a partner of a sheriff who his partner was killed on duty. He got a call from the chief of police telling him, "I'm sorry, John died." He doesn't get the bereavement pay. Their son doesn't get the benefits that he would normally get if they were married. And so to show these cases where you can show concretely the harm of discrimination, I think is the challenge that's before us. On the questions of criminal justice, and then I'll conclude with the immigration issue. On criminal justice, we have to make the arguments about money. Let's be practical and pragmatic. We know what our principles are. Let's show them what this is costing us and what we're not able to do, that it costs more money to imprison someone in a jail in California than it does to pay the tuition to UC Berkeley. You know, let's point that out. Let's show exactly what we spend on the criminal justice system and what we're not spending because we have such a large incarceration problem. I also think that if you had tried to design a system of criminal justice that would push racial and ethnic minorities back into the pre-civil rights era, we could hardly have come up with a system that is more effective than the one we have now. And this new Jim Crow that we call by other names as being tough on crime really must be called out for the blatant racism which is underlying most of our policies on criminal justice systems. Finally, on immigration, you all won Prop 187 here in California. You have a responsibility to help us win in Arizona. You have a responsibility to help us win in New Mexico, in Nebraska, places where we find the anti-immigrant sentiment that is fully in force. And yet it's not sufficient to say that those issues have been largely put to rest in terms of the law in California. It's more incumbent upon this state, given its importance, to push back in other states. I will just close with a final remark. It is often hard to see the signs of encouragement when you have so many things left on the to-do list. It always seems that no matter how hard you work and no matter how good you are, you end up going to sleep if you do the work we do feeling inadequate. But then I'm also struck by the fact that we have to not just play to the facts and numbers, you have to play to the human spirit. There's something innately good in all of us. There is something that cannot be quantified by an Excel spreadsheet. It's the brilliance of the human mind, the dream. And there's one of my favorite poets. I read poetry when I want to go to sleep. And one of my favorite poets wrote of the time of when immigrants were coming through America. And it's inscribed in a very small plaque on Ellis Island, which is where we celebrate our 90th anniversary and where I did research on him. And he would write, "There are those who say that the liberation of humanity, the freedom of man and mind, is nothing but a dream. They are right. It is the American dream." And thank you to the Rosenberg Foundation for keeping that dream alive.